What if the United States and Russia, the world's two largest nuclear powers, went to war? It's a question that has haunted generations, but today, it feels more urgent than ever. The mere possibility of such a conflict is almost unthinkable, yet it's a scenario that experts, governments, and ordinary people alike are forced to consider. As of late 2025, tensions are dangerously high. Diplomatic relations have frayed, and the world watches as both sides engage in a high-stakes game of brinkmanship. Every headline, every military maneuver, and every diplomatic standoff adds fuel to a fire that could ignite at any moment. Recent nuclear weapons tests and the looming expiration of the New START treaty have put the world on edge. The collapse of arms control agreements has left both nations with fewer restraints, and the threat of a new arms race is no longer just theoretical, it's unfolding before our eyes. This is not a distant threat. It's a real danger that could reshape our planet in unimaginable ways. The anxiety is palpable, from the halls of power to the homes of ordinary families. The shadow of nuclear war stretches across continents, touching every life with uncertainty. Understanding nuclear war isn't about fear-mongering, it's about recognizing the stakes for everyone alive today. It's about facing the reality that the decisions made by a few could impact billions. Education and awareness are our first lines of defense against complacency. A nuclear conflict would be a step-by-step process of global destruction, affecting everyone, everywhere. The devastation wouldn't be limited to the initial blasts. Fallout, climate disruption, and economic collapse would ripple across the globe, leaving no nation untouched. The US and Russia control over 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, over 11,000 warheads, each far more powerful than those used in WW2. These arsenals are capable of ending civilization as we know it, with a single decision unleashing destruction on a scale never before seen. A full-scale exchange would mean hundreds, even thousands of warheads launched across continents. Cities would vanish in moments, and the world's infrastructure would collapse. The speed and scale of such an attack would leave little time for response or evacuation. This is a war no one can win, and no one can escape. The aftermath would be a world forever changed, scarred by radiation, famine, and the loss of millions of lives. Survivors would face a harsh new reality, struggling to rebuild amid chaos and despair. Let's break down what would actually happen from the first missile launch to the aftermath to understand why preventing nuclear war must be humanity's top priority. Only by confronting the full consequences can we hope to avoid them. The future of our world depends on choosing peace over destruction. Our collective actions, choices, and voices matter now more than ever. The path we choose today will determine the fate of generations to come. Nuclear war would begin without warning, missiles launched from silos and submarines crossing continents in minutes. The world's most advanced weapons, hidden beneath oceans and buried deep underground, would suddenly roar to life, their deadly cargoes arcing silently through the upper atmosphere. There would be no time to negotiate, no chance for leaders to intervene. The fate of millions would be decided in the span of a heartbeat. There would be no time for dramatic announcements. For most, the first sign would be air raid sirens, offering only moments to react. In cities around the world, people would freeze in confusion and terror as the wailing alarms echoed through the streets. Emergency alerts would flash across screens, but for many, it would already be too late to seek shelter or say goodbye. Major cities and military sites would be targeted: New York, Moscow, Washington, missile silos, and bases. The world's most iconic skylines and strategic locations would become bullseyes, chosen for their political, economic, and military significance. No corner of the globe would feel truly safe. Hundreds of warheads would rain down, aiming to cripple the enemy's ability to respond. The sky would be filled with streaks of light as missiles raced toward their targets, each one carrying unimaginable destructive power. Military command centers would scramble to track the launches, but the sheer speed and scale would overwhelm even the most prepared defenses. As warheads re-enter the atmosphere, they'd streak across the sky like a deadly meteor shower. For those watching from below, the night would be lit by burning trails, a terrifying spectacle that signaled the end was near. The world would hold its breath, knowing that devastation was only seconds away. A single warhead would create a fireball hotter than the sun, vaporizing everything at its center. The explosion would unleash a blinding flash, followed by a towering mushroom cloud that would rise for miles, Nothing within the blast zone would survive. Buildings, vehicles, and people would simply disappear. The blast wave would flatten buildings for miles, killing tens of millions instantly. Shock waves would shatter glass, topple skyscrapers, and turn entire neighborhoods into rubble. The scale of destruction would be unlike anything humanity has ever witnessed. Power grids and communication networks would be destroyed, plunging continents into darkness and silence. The modern world's lifelines, electricity, internet, radio, would vanish in an instant, leaving survivors isolated and afraid. Survivors would be cut off, unable to call for help or know what was happening. In the aftermath, confusion and fear would reign as people searched desperately for loved ones, not knowing if rescue would ever come. In just 30 minutes, the modern world would be reduced to ruins and chaos. Civilization as we know it would be shattered, leaving only devastation and uncertainty in its wake. At Ground Zero, the aftermath is apocalyptic. Firestorms ignite everything flammable, merging into city-wide infernos. These fires create hurricane-force winds, turning cities into inescapable furnaces. The initial burst of radiation is a silent killer, delivering fatal doses even to those in shelters. Cities like Chicago or Moscow would vanish, replaced by craters and radioactive wastelands. The air would be thick with dust and smoke, blocking out the sun. Survivors would emerge into a world of death and destruction, with no hope of rescue. Emergency services would be gone, hospitals, police, and fire departments obliterated. Survivors would be utterly alone in a landscape of horror. Days after the blasts, radioactive fallout would drift for thousands of miles, contaminating land, water, and air. Even rural areas would be at risk. Fallout causes acute radiation sickness, with symptoms from nausea to fatal organ failure. Without medical care, even moderate exposure would be deadly. Survivors would be forced to shelter underground for weeks, risking starvation or radiation poisoning if they ventured out. Healthcare systems would collapse, hospitals destroyed, doctors overwhelmed or dead. Millions suffering from burns and injuries would have no hope of treatment. Clean water would be scarce, as rivers and reservoirs become radioactive. Food supplies would run out, forcing survivors to choose between starvation and exposure. The air itself would be toxic, filled with radioactive dust. Life would become a desperate struggle for survival in a poisoned world. In the aftermath, society would unravel, governments gone, law and order broken. Police and military would be overwhelmed or destroyed, leaving people to fend for themselves. The economy would vanish overnight. Money and digital systems rendered useless. Only practical necessities, food, water, medicine, weapons, would matter. Mass migrations would begin as survivors flee contaminated zones, only to face hostility and violence elsewhere. Communities would become isolated, fiercely protective, and suspicious of outsiders. Trust and cooperation would disappear, replaced by fear and brutality. The psychological toll would be immense. Grief, trauma, and despair everywhere. Culture, art, and normal life would vanish, replaced by a grim struggle to survive. For many, the living might envy the dead. The greatest long-term threat is nuclear winter. Firestorms inject black soot into the stratosphere, blocking sunlight for years. Global temperatures would drop by more than 10 degrees Celsius, colder than the last ice age. Summers would vanish. The world plunged into a decade-long twilight. Ecosystems would collapse. Phytoplankton die. Marine life vanishes. Forests and crops wither. The ozone layer would be destroyed, letting deadly UV radiation reach the surface. Even as the sky clears, survivors would face intense sunburn and cancer risks. The planet's natural systems, evolved over millions of years, would be thrown into chaos. Recovery would be slow, dangerous, and uncertain. Nuclear winter would trigger a global famine. Agriculture collapses, fields become frozen wastelands. Stored food would run out quickly, billions would face starvation. Even countries untouched by bombs would suffer as crops fail worldwide. Livestock would die off, oceans would be barren, and all major food sources would disappear. Survivors would scavenge for scraps, but starvation would last for years. Soil would remain radioactive, seeds and farming knowledge lost. Rebuilding agriculture would be a monumental challenge for the few who remain. The famine would be the deadliest chapter, ensuring civilization's collapse. Even as temperatures rise, the world would be unrecognizable. Humanity's survival would hang by a thread. Missile defense systems sound reassuring, but they can't stop a large-scale nuclear attack. Detecting and intercepting thousands of warheads and decoys in minutes is nearly impossible. Even a 90% success rate would mean hundreds of warheads get through, enough to destroy civilization. Decoys and maneuvering warheads make interception even harder. Partial success is total failure. One warhead can destroy a city and trigger global catastrophe. The only real safety is preventing missiles from launching at all. Relying on missile defense is a dangerous illusion that can make leaders reckless. The only winning move is to dismantle the weapons themselves. The timeline of nuclear war is a journey into darkness, minutes to destruction, days of fallout, months of chaos, and the slow unraveling of everything we know. In mere moments, cities could be erased, lives lost, and the world as we understand it would be forever changed. The clock would start ticking, not just for those at ground zero, but for every living thing on Earth. The aftermath would stretch on for years, with nuclear winter casting a shadow over the planet. Crops would fail, temperatures would plummet, and sunlight would struggle to reach the ground. The world would become unrecognizable, a place of scarcity and struggle. This is not fiction or distant speculation, it's the scientifically understood consequence of the weapons we continue to build and maintain. Decades of research have shown us the reality. The threat is real, and it is present every day. Fallout and soot would circle the globe, carried by winds across borders and oceans, plunging all nations into cold and famine. No country would be immune, no society untouched by the devastation. No one would be spared. Our atmosphere and ecosystems are shared, intricately connected. The air we breathe, the food we grow, and the water we drink all depend on a stable planet. The illusion of safety is gone. These weapons are a suicide vest for the planet, threatening not just enemies but all of humanity. The legacy of past disasters reminds us that the consequences last for generations. Even a limited exchange, just a fraction of the world's arsenals, would trigger global catastrophe, disrupting weather, agriculture, and the very fabric of civilization. The only path to true security is through diplomacy, trust, and the complete elimination of nuclear arsenals. It requires courage, cooperation, and a commitment to peace that transcends borders. Preventing nuclear war is humanity's most urgent and shared task. It is a responsibility that belongs to every generation and every nation. We must demand better from our leaders, raise our voices, and insist on a future free from the shadow of the mushroom cloud. Our collective action can shape the world we leave behind. Our shared fate depends on it. The choice is ours. Together, we can protect this fragile world for generations to come.